Okay, we are rolling, and we are rolling, and we are rolling. Hey, how you doing? Once again, this is Neil Patterson. I'm a guy, and I'm a dude, and we are recording this call, and we are doing the SUPcast thing. We are doing the SUPcast remote. Once again, SUPcast remote number, whatever this is. I'm not keeping track. I don't even know what episode it is anymore. Got to get rid of this. Get rid of that. But today, we're going to talk to my friend Dan Behrens, a.k.a. Danimal Cannon, who is a chiptune producer, performer, music-making guy that makes music for all types of different stuff, video games, you name it. And I'm going to ask him a bunch of dumb questions because he is, it's not even arguable. He's definitely smarter than me. So I'm just going to be the dumb guy, and I'm going to be like, so, what's this about? And what's that about? It's the heartbeat of America. Yeah, so we're going to talk with Dan Behrens, a.k.a. Danimal Cannon. He is a dude, and he is a guitar dude, and a producer dude, and a music dude, and a video game dude, and a dude. And we're all dudes here. But interesting to see as this COVID thing took over, our friend Dan said he was symptomatic, like possessing COVID symptoms. So we're going to talk to him about that because he's starting to feel better. But it's really scary, you know? At first, we were like, this isn't hitting anyone we know. But yeah, it's hitting people we know now. It's starting to affect those surrounded by us. So for all those motherfuckers that were just like, oh, it's some sort of weird hoax. This is just a hoax. This is just election hoax. I don't know. Better rethink that shit. This seems pretty real to me. Oh, man.
Check.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, I see you.
Cool. Let me put on a sweet background because I'm a guy.
Oh, I got one too, bro.
All right. Well, we'll count down together. So 3, 2, 1. Yay.
Okay, cool.
Whatever. That's close enough.
It is happening.
Yes.
Life is happening. Well, you sound good. You don't sound congested, at least from what I can tell.
Good. No, I'm not congested. The past couple of days, though, I've been worried I'm going to lose my voice. So I'll let you know if that happens.
Yeah, I've been feeling similarly. When I saw your post on Facebook, I was just like, I was like, holy shit. Like,
yeah, no, same. I am on day 13, although today's the best I've felt yet. I essentially didn't wake up crazy dehydrated. And I don't know if I have coronavirus because tests were not available when I felt really sick. And my doctor was like, yeah, I feel sick too, and I've been exposed, and I can't get a test. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, just assume you have it and isolate. So I've been mostly in this room for the last 13 days.
Okay.
And once I'm completely free of any symptoms, then I have to like isolate for like 7 more days.
Yeah, that's what I read. As soon as the symptoms go away, you still have to continue to isolate.
Yep.
And are you in a living space with, you said, your father, right?
Yeah, so I take care of my dad who has some health problems, and
right.
He's like 75, so he's essentially an at-risk person. So I have been doing some pretty extreme things around the house. I use a separate bathroom. I pretty much stay in this room unless I have to go to the kitchen for food. I have gloves that I wear when I actually talked to a doctor about like proper glove technique and how to wash even after you put on gloves. I actually wash my hands, then I put gloves on, and then I wash my hands with the gloves on. So I wash the gloves themselves. And I happen to have a ton of those Lysol wipes before any of this happened, which is great. So when I have to navigate the house or whatever, I wear like this t-shirt mask that I figured out how to make. That's like several layers of shirt wrapped around. And then sometimes if I have to open like a cabinet or something like that, I'll actually open it with a Lysol wipe, like with it over my hand, and just open it with the wipe instead of actually my hand and stuff like that. And then I can wipe it down when it's done. And, hopefully, he doesn't have any symptoms right now. So that would be good. But yeah, life's been pretty wacky.
Yeah, that was the when this first broke out, and not in China, but when I first like caught wind to how severe it was going to be in the States, I immediately wanted to drive back to Michigan and take care of my mom, who has COPD. She's been smoking cigarettes her entire life. She had a bunch of brain surgeries in 2017, so she has had health problems in the past. So she's definitely super at risk, considering that she already has bad lungs.
Right.
But then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, if I go out there, like I'm gonna have to quarantine myself like in my van in her driveway, because I can't go in her fucking house and because I'd been feeling sick. Even the last tour we did butted up to where they started canceling everything. Like our last show was at a winery, and then the next day they closed all wineries the next day in California. So we like played essentially the last day you could play a gig.
What date was that?
That was the 15th.
Okay.
It might have been the 14th. It was the 14th or 15th, but the governor of California shut everything down, and we found this out when we were on our way back to LA we were in like Paso Robles, which is like Central California. Mm-hmm. And it was just wild because the night before we were playing this gig and everyone was drinking wine and no one gave a shit about distancing. Everyone was like, the lead singer of the other band we were playing with was like making out with some random girl and pouring wine all over it was just like chaos. People were moshing, like
stuff you do at a concert.
Stuff you don't do if you know that a pandemic has hit the United States, you know? And
yep.
I started getting really bugged out. Like, and anyone who listens to this podcast, I've told the story a million times, but I went, the day I got back into town, I went and I got my van. I spent like $900 on a credit card to make sure my van was like in tip-top condition, because I was going to drive east and go where there's fresh water. I thought there was going to be looting and killing in the streets and martial law and all. You know, I was like fully
right.
The fear had taken over, because I went into a Walmart the day our tour got canceled or whatever, and you could just taste the fear. You could smell the fear. You could feel it. I started panicking. I'm an anxious guy to begin with. So you take a regular anxious guy and you add a pandemic and people hoarding supplies to it. And it just like, I called my brother. I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I'm making a run for it. I was going to like leave my girlfriend at her parents. Yeah.
So for me, my birthday was on March 11th.
Okay.
And so I went out to the bar with a bunch of my friends that night. And I had actually like kind of known, I said it to a couple people that like, if my birthday had been 1 or 2 days later, I probably wouldn't have went out, because I had been sort of paying attention to the news, and I was like, this is getting bad real quick.
Yeah.
And while I was at the bar that night, the NBA canceled their season. And
it's
like
huge.
That's like, $1 billion of revenue. Like that's not something that people do lightly. And for me, that was like the big red flag that like, oh, this is a giant deal. This is not like SARS or swine flu or something like that, where like, oh yeah, it's this thing I hear about in the news, but it's not something that directly affects my life. And so for me, that was the big red flag. And then that night, Trump actually declared a state of emergency, which I don't know what that means. I know that that's just a thing, a declaration. But it was at that point, it was like, all right, I have to take this like really seriously. Then the next day I watched actually, and he's not my favorite person ever because he's said a bunch of problematic stuff, but he does do good interviews. Joe Rogan, he had this epidemiologist on his podcast.
Yeah, I saw that.
And some of the specifics that this guy was saying, like super, because they can do long form conversations, and like the news is just really bad at like either doing sound bites or opinion pieces and not like letting experts just talk at length, because that's what you need. And some of the stuff this guy was saying, I was like, oh my God. And at that moment, it was like, I literally went out like an hour after that, March 12th, picked up supplies, like things that I would need. I picked up like 2 weeks worth, and I didn't go to like major grocery stores. I went to, I went to smaller shops that I knew to pick up things, and it's like, yo, we're gonna not go anywhere, and just hunker down because this is legit. And that was sort of before most people were really taking it seriously. Like you said, you played a concert
3 or 4 days ahead of me.
Yeah. I have a buddy who was in a Irish band, and they had gigs every day of the week leading up to and beyond St. Patrick's Day. Mm-hmm. And it cost his band like probably over $5 or $6 grand in revenue just from having to cancel all their shows that week. He's in Atlanta. And, I told him, I was like, it's the right move. Like, I know that it sucks and it's terrible, but like, you can't play those shows.
My girlfriend got hired to do this acting gig in New York City, and they canceled. They hired her, and then they canceled the gig, and she was like really bummed out about it. And I remember telling her, like, there's going to be a lot more people than just you having to cancel stuff. Like, this isn't going to just affect you. And this was before I even left for the tour, so I would say this was maybe like the 10th of March. But what was crazy is the succession of days. Like, it got more extreme by the day. And because, that's what I noticed too. We're on tour, but the shows didn't get canceled. But the second day of the tour, there was 100 pre-sales, 25 people show up. The next day, they cancel the NBA. The next day, they cancel fucking Disneyland. And and it's just like, and you got to think about it this way. Like what you were saying about the revenue. If people stand to make billions, and all these conspiracy theorists that are talking to like sports are the great detractor, or sports are something that makes people, not think about what's right in front of their face so they can smoke and mirrors type stuff. Like, why would they cancel sports as something that's keeping everybody sane in mass? So if they're canceling that, not only they're losing money, but they're losing the big detractor, the big thing that keeps people occupied, at least, normal Americans that are into that type of thing.
I agree 100%. For me, it was such a big red flag.
It freaked me out so bad. And I remember I was in Santa Rosa, California, and I was at the gig, and I called my girlfriend. I'm like, listen, we need to get the fuck out of LA. And she convinced me to stay, though. I'm stuck here. So I'm in Long Beach. It's not so bad. We're doing okay. I don't know. I'm kind of just like supremely caffeinated right now. I might be rambling a little bit.
It's all right. That's the way to do a podcast.
But yeah, I'm glad that your symptoms have lifted. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your thought process was when you started feeling bad?
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever day was 13 days ago. I don't remember exactly what day it was or what the date was, but it was a Saturday, and I woke up just kind of feeling like crap, and I was playing D&D with my friends, and I noticed that I think I'm getting a fever, and I started to have a fever, and it sucked because I didn't have a working thermometer. There was an old thermometer in the house, like an old I want to say analog. It used a liquid that wasn't mercury. Anyways, it was frozen, at some temperature. I put it in ice water and it wouldn't move at all, and it just didn't work. And it was like, oh man. And so I'm emailing my doctor, and I could feel a tightness in my chest. And it was scary. I told my dad, I was like, I'm not feeling well. And he's like, oh, you're scaring the shit out of me. And it's okay if I curse, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, me too. And, I don't know when I could have caught it. It's one of those things where you never know when you get anything, right? It's a momentary lapse of judgment. It could have been when I was out, drinking with people on my birthday. It could have been in town days before we have reported cases. Because the thing about it is there are not tests out there. Nope. And I don't know what it is now.
Unless you're rich.
Yeah, if you're rich, you can get a test. And also, well, at least in New York State, and I don't know how it is state by state, but in New York State, there just isn't tests. So whatever numbers that they're reporting, I think they're only testing people that are like in hospitals, like who have to be admitted into hospitals. And so whatever numbers that they report, it's got to be like 5 times higher, because only 20. If you assume that 20% of people who get it need to be hospitalized, and those are the only people getting tests, you have to assume the numbers locally are at least 5 times higher than what's being reported. And so I kind of hate when they report like the local numbers of whatever, because
it's not accurate.
It's not accurate. Like, they should have a giant asterisk next to it, like, and just repeat over and over that the numbers are much higher than this. This isn't how many people have it here. This is how many we've detected.
Because they haven't tested anybody. There's not tests available. You can't. They're talking about in California, they're going to do some like drive-through testing that they're starting to implement, but they said in the Facebook ad or whatever that it'll be ready in a matter of weeks, and it's like, okay, but this is now. Like, what do we do now? And
I asked my doctor about that exact thing. I was like, hey, what's the deal with drive-through testing? Any of that? Can I just go and do that? And he's like, it's not available. It's like, it just isn't. Sorry, hunker down. And I also, this is just an edge case, but I know people who have posted things like, oh, my insurance won't cover, like, I had to go into the hospital for coronavirus, but I couldn't get a test. And so my medical expenses for that are like not being covered for whatever reason. And so like, there's going to be a lot of garbage. Like, there's a lot of people are going to have a lot of trouble. And
God bless America.
Oh God, we're specially equipped with every aspect of this is kind of a nightmare, but we're making it work. And hey, in some ways we're doing okay in that you were expecting widespread panic and looting in the streets, and we don't have that yet. So
well, it's wild because that was what I was afraid of, but it's a fucking ghost town. I live in Long Beach, and people are actually taking this pretty seriously in California, it's a good thing. I don't know what the numbers are. I stopped watching the news because it was just inducing panic. I'm kind of just in my own little world. I'm trying to teach myself some like audio engineering type stuff. I'm trying to use this time actually to improve on skills that I yet have to possess. So I'm just trying to stay in my own little bubble, and I'm doing a lot of podcasts too, which is cool because once I realized I could talk to people and record it and get some like decent content from Zoom, it just opened up this whole world of possibilities, and I feel ultimately like less alone because it's just me and my girlfriend here.
Sure.
But it's actually funny because I'm doing so many podcasts. She's like, I'm not spending enough time with her, so we're getting had a little. Yeah, but we're working it out. It's funny because I'm actually like scheduling time to be working and scheduling like leisure time. I actually have it blocked off now, and like when we eat dinner, like, because we're trying to create some sort of normalcy in this. So it's not just like this big wide open, well, I'll hang out with you next week when I'm figured, after 5 full days of like crane necking, looking at computer monitors, so I'm trying to.
That's the way to do it, honestly. Working from home's hard. I've been working from home for a while now, and I definitely have some issues with self-scheduling. Mm-hmm. And so if I had set aside certain times to do certain things, it's really helpful. So I think you're doing it perfect, honestly. With my dad. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, dude.
With my dad, I'm trying to keep as much distance as possible. So some days, I'll say like 2 sentences to him because I don't want to be in the same room as him. I don't want to be interacting with him. And so, both me and him are very lonely, even though that we're both stuck in this house, all the time. Luckily, I have the internet and I can, see people on my screen and chat with them, or just type chat, but he doesn't have any of that. So he's going a little stir crazy right now.
Yeah, my mom's 71 and she is a news junkie. So
oh God,
it's terrible. It's really funny because I was telling the story the other day. She was talking about who you're going to vote for come November, and I'm just like, I don't know, not Biden, not Trump, but she got all defensive. She's like, I was talking about how Joe Biden was problematic. He's a touchy-feely guy, and like all of those sound bites and all of those video clips. And then there's actually people that have come forward and say, "Hey, I was sexually assaulted by this guy when I was working for him." And I was trying to tell this to my mom, and she goes, "Don't say that about my Joe." She referred to him as my Joe.
Oh my God!
And I'm shaking my head. I love my mother dearly, but she definitely will sit in front of like mainstream. I think she's a CNN person. So
that's all right. I'll take a my Joe mother rather than my don't you talk bad about my Trump dad. So yeah.
Well, what can you do? You
pick your poison.
It's pretty futile for me to try and change her mind. So I just kind of like cringe a little bit over the phone and just going to let her do her thing. Well, I remember actually in 2008 when Obama was doing his thing, I was like moved by Obama's public speaking.
He's a very good speaker.
Yeah, during the whole change thing, and I was like, I'm going to vote for this guy. I trust him, and then it's like, and I did, but that was the last time I voted in a big election because it's just like he was ushered in, and then there was all the Guantanamo Bay stuff and all the drone strikes, and there's just like, I mean, he doesn't like. He's got blood on his hands too. I think any big politician does. The whole thing, I don't know, man. We don't need to get into that though.
No, that's fine. I have things to say, but I also enjoy not saying them. So.
You can say whatever you want though. I mean, I want this to be a platform for you. Even if it's a small one. Just on my
one
YouTube
thing
channel.
Is I try really hard to be informed about certain things. Obviously, sometimes you got to tune out just for your own mental health. Because sometimes just the news and learning everything and especially interacting with others relating to the news can just be such a mental struggle. But I try really hard to stay informed. And
that's good.
Also, like separating fact from fiction is legitimately hard.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many people with less than stellar intentions, and they can just do all the mental gymnastics in the world and come up with these really convincing arguments for horrible, terrible, untrue things. And it's a constant struggle to like know what the real truth is. And I try really hard though, because it is important. And, I want to know. And a lot of times the answers are really unsatisfying, where it's like, oh, yeah, this is half true. Or like there's every single thing that anyone says, like, turns out there's way more nuance to the situation than they'll give credit for. They'll just paint it in this like broad brushstroke. And it turns out that like, oh, actually, there's tons of other details that matter. And separating out all of that stuff is so hard and exhausting. And everyone who's telling you something wants to show things in a certain light. But I try really hard. Especially with this coronavirus thing, there's tons of misinformation. And this is one of the few times where I've actually been calling people out for spreading misinformation, because now it's not just this nebulous piece of information that may or may not be meaningful in the grand scheme of things. It's like, no, these are people's lives now, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's life or death at this point.
Yeah, and this directly affects all of us. Your decisions could affect, my dad or your grandpa or somebody else's aunt or something like that. And so having a shitty opinion or linking to a shitty piece of material that is misrepresenting things, like, that's dangerous. And so I've been actually calling people out. I know a bit about some of these subjects. My degree actually is in cellular and molecular biology, and I've done some genetics research and things like that. So it essentially gives me a good bullshit detector when it comes to especially scientific concepts and stuff like that. And I know how to like literally go and find people who can talk about the literature that's being published in a meaningful way and what are some of the things to look out for and how to analyze statistics. And not that I can do all of that, but I can tell who's bullshitting and who's not. And I've been able to find some really good sources on like things like the hydroxychloroquine stuff, where like some people are like, it's a miracle cure, blah, 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 blah. And other people are like actually looking at the tiny studies that are riddled with problems that don't actually say much when you do a legit statistical analysis. And so that degree,
and wasn't there a couple in Arizona that just ate some of that and died?
Yeah. It's so the actual drug, which I have.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a hydroxychloroquine. I'll tell that story in a second.
Okay.
And that is a drug, but there also is a substance just called chloroquine, which is, I haven't looked up exactly how similar it is, but it's probably a similar thing because it's designed to fight off amoebas, I think, in fish tanks.
Yeah. That's what those people ate, I believe.
Yeah. And it's when people are like, they drank fish tank cleaner. It's like, yeah, well, like hydroxychloroquine kind of does a similar thing. Like it fights off microbes in your body. That's what the chloroquine that they, had. The problem is you can't dose that. And I think it's actually a little bit less safe for you than hydroxychloroquine. And so I'm not entirely sure if what they took is exactly the same thing or if it's close enough. But the fact is whatever dosage they had was not recommended by a pharmacy.
Safe. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, people are scared, and I get it. Right? Like, we're all scared. If you're not scared, I think you're fucking up. Because you should be.
Oh, yeah.
That was that thing after I saw that podcast. I should be scared because that's a normal reaction. Doesn't mean you need to freak out, and build a bunker, but you should be taking steps to protect yourself and your loved ones, because that is the level of concern that you should have for this sort of thing. And so I'll tell you about, I actually have both the azithromycin and the hydroxychloroquine.
Now, were you prescribed those by your doctor? Is it a recent pickup?
So my doctor did not prescribe that for me. Okay. A doctor that I know and I'm friends with called me when I posted that on Facebook. And he said, the results are still inconclusive right now. He's like, but he asked me about my medical conditions and stuff like that. And he's like, I'm going to prescribe this for you just in case it is viable, because what it might do if it does work is it might lower your viral load so that you're less contagious around the house. And he's like, I wouldn't do this if you didn't have somebody at risk in your house. Mm-hmm. That you're caring for. But if there is a chance that this could lower your viral load so that you'd be less contagious to your father. Personally, I don't think it worked at all. So, and honestly, all it did was give me the shits.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice.
Thumbs down.
Yeah. So... but the research that when I was taking it, I was like, I'm actually going to look into this pretty hardcore and see what some pharmacists online and other like researching doctors are saying about these studies. And for the most part, all of the legit medical people who take care, after looking at all the data, they probably would not prescribe it for their patients. But the person that prescribed it for me was doing me a favor just in case. And, it is cool, but I don't think it was helpful. He also sent me some masks and stuff like that. So,
well, it seems like a good dude.
Yeah. But again, that's, I don't know, privilege, I guess, that like I have a random doctor on call, just because I'm friends with people. Like people don't have that. No. I was lucky to get an email back 2 days later from my doctor.
Yeah. Well, you got to be thankful for things like that.
Yeah. And I've had people reach out. Somebody reached out to me the other day and they were like, hey, do you need gloves? And I was like, actually, I do, because I had a box of 100 of them and they're almost out now. And so they FedExed me or priority shipped me some gloves, a box of gloves, and that'll be super helpful, in the coming time, where my dad and I have to, when I get better, we have to go out shopping and go into the world and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to have him in mind that whole time. Now, when you said you noticed you felt like you were getting a fever, did you actually get a fever? Like, did you actually, as far as the COVID symptoms are concerned, like, did you get all of those symptoms? Like, how?
Not all of them.
Okay.
Also, I did have a friend who said they had an extra thermometer and they left it out on their porch, and I went and picked it up.
Nice.
So I also have a thermometer. I haven't had a fever since day one. Day one, I had a fever, and actually part of day two, I had it as well. And since then, I haven't had the fever. What I have had was a tightness in my chest for the last 13 days, where it just feels like there's like a dog sitting on your chest or something like that, where it's not like crazy. It's just, hey, this persistent pain. And I haven't had like a runny nose or a cough really. But I don't know. I haven't had a test. And like when you have, these symptoms, it doesn't feel like anything that I've ever had before. Doesn't feel like any so I have some respiratory illness that I've never had before during a pandemic. Like, you have to assume that you have it.
And it's freaky because I did notice before, it was like early March, and I go to the gym with my girlfriend and I run on the treadmill, and they're up for about 2 weeks up until I started my tour. I did notice, I'm like, why am I short of breath? And that's why when I read your post, I'm like, I started getting kind of freaked out. Just when this started going around, but because like I feel like my lung capacity has been compromised in some way. Even like I ran around the park a little bit yesterday. I just feel in general like I can't get as much air into my lungs. And people have told me, oh, that's just your nerves, it's just anxiety. But this was happening before I even knew about a pandemic.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like I got a flu shot earlier this year, so
yeah.
I'm fairly sure it's not the flu, but that's not 100%. And maybe it's some pneumonia, but again, I'd have to get a test for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what really sucks. I wish we were living in South Korea where you could just get a test anytime that, anywhere that you went, and it sucks, but it is what it is. The other factor that's interesting in this is my girlfriend lives in Toronto.
Yeah.
And the border to Canada is closed. So even if, I was well, I can't see her until God knows
all this
when.
is over, yeah.
Yeah, who knows when they're going to open it up. And, we've had a couple conversations about it, but she's pretty emotional about it. I actually haven't seen her since February, which is the longest. I think I haven't seen her since before we started dating. And, it's pretty nutty, just where it's like, I don't know when I'll be able to see my girlfriend again. It's just someday,
That's rough. Alex from Psychostick, he's dating a Canadian woman too.
Yeah,
right?
we were supposed to go out on some double dates. It just the timing never worked out.
Yeah. So is he in the States right now? I assume so because they're doing all the live streams and whatnot.
Yes, okay. They are.
Have you talked to him?
No, but I've talked to Josh from Psychostick a bunch because there was some Facebook thread about coronavirus stuff, and I was raising some opinions, and he messaged me and he's like, I know that you have a science background, and I wanted to talk to you about this because there's just so much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
And we were like hashing it out back and forth, talking about, what's the latest information and stuff like that. Because he's also actually all the Psychostick guys are like really scientifically minded people.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah. We're in the van on tour, like talking about like psychology studies with Alex because he's does psychology stuff. Maddie does engineering, actually. I think he has an engineering degree.
He does.
Yeah. And Josh is just very well read. Like he was reading in the van, which I can't read while writing at all. I just get motion sick. But yeah, he's constantly reading like science books and stuff like that. So yeah, we at some point on the tour we figured out we were all big science geeks and we were just having big old nerd conversations.
It's funny when the band that has the beer song is like some of the smartest guys I know, you know?
Right.
Like yeah, and they took us in December. They took us on a few shows. Like me and my bass player. I flew out to Detroit, and then we went and we were in the van with them. And yeah, they're just, I don't know. I feel like intellectually inferior, and especially and even like I was looking at your Wikipedia, and I'm like, wow, Danimal is so accomplished. You have a fucking TED Talk, man.
I did do that.
Yeah,
I was. I have some things to say about TED. I don't just because. I think that a lot of TED Talks are kind of BS.
You there?
But
a little lag there.
I think some TED Talks are kind of BS. But yeah, I did that. That was actually a really good experience. For me, I love to share like things that I'm passionate about. I'm like, oh my God, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about that. Like, let me show you the thing that I'm a giant geek about because I want you to appreciate this as much as I do. And so that was a cool opportunity for me to be able to just be a big geek about this thing that I loved. And I'm always about that. I've done a bunch of presentations and classes and stuff like that at conventions and things like that.
Would you say now that you're feeling a little bit better, is your like productivity up? Like, are you taking advantage of this time, or have you just been pretty much worrying about your dad and taking care of yourself?
I have not been doing a very good job at being productive. The only thing I've done is play D&D online and watch a lot of things online, like a lot of YouTube or a lot of things on Netflix. I've been trying to practice guitar. Actually, for the first few days, I felt too crappy to even like practice guitar hard. But I've been trying to practice guitar a bit, just getting out the old metronome and becoming a shred boy.
Doing some runs.
Yeah,
I should be doing more of that. But yeah, it's we did that tour back in 2018, and it was Psychostick, Downtown Brown, and Danimal Cannon. And I remember my friend Ryan Schremp, who I don't know if you know Ryan Schremp personally. He's a Madison, Wisconsin guy, but now lives in Arizona.
He added me on Facebook, so we interact on Facebook a little bit, but I don't really know him.
Yeah, he's a nice dude. He's a good friend of mine. But he's like, you're playing with Danimal, and but you didn't the tour. You hopped off the tour before the Phoenix date, so he was super bummed out about that.
I wish I could have been there for that.
Yeah, why did you have to? Oh, you had other stuff to do.
Yeah, I think I had like a convention that was paying me really well. They've been really good to me before. That I had already had booked for months before the tour was there, and I didn't want to cancel on them because they've been really good to me before. So I would have felt like a jerk if I'd been like, sorry, I know you already announced me on your website, but I'm not doing your thing anymore.
Yeah, and the Psychostick guys, they get it. Like,
yeah,
you did most of the tour. I think it was a short run anyway. I don't even. Did you do what like 10 dates?
I think I did St. Louis to Portland, wherever that went. So there's something like 10 days. The other thing is at that time I was also taking care of my dad, and that was the longest I had left him by himself without me being there. So I was also a little concerned for his health, which I should have been because his health did take a downturn. And so I thought it was okay if I got back a little sooner so that I could like check in on him and not do like, the full 2.5 week tour or whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, that's important. And that's the thing is a lot of times, and I noticed in the past that I've been super like had tunnel vision about my band and trying to make it a success and whatnot. But there are things in life that happen. Like when my mom had multiple brain surgeries in 2017 and she had a hip replacement in 2015 and stuff like that. And my brother and my sister are really busy. I'm this like kind of like nomadic dude that I can drop what I'm doing if I want to. So,
right.
So I pretty much dropped whatever I was doing. I'm like, all right, I got to take care of my mom, and I had to cancel shows about it. I had to cancel tours about it. But that's the thing though, is if there are things that are more important than getting on stage and saying dumb stuff into a microphone, I think.
No, but also I do miss the tunnel vision because I used to be able to do that, and I love doing it. I love I'm the most self-satisfied when I am the most productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the tunnel vision. I like those nights when I am working on something and oops, it's 4 a.m. and I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
those are my favorite
because it takes you. It once you get obsessed with something, if it doesn't feel like you're necessarily pushing, it feels like you're being pulled. That's the way I look at it. If I'm starting to learn a new skill or if I'm like writing a song and I'm like, oh, this is going somewhere, it pulls you if you feel like, and I love that. And that was happening with me the last few days. I've been doing so many podcasts and talking with so many people and learning OBS, and I'm just like, oh, well, if I'm in my bunker, I might as well like learn how to do all this stuff. And so it was pulling me, but then I was neglecting the person that I live with, and so it's about balance. And I'm terrible at balance. I'm all in, whether it's with driving around in a van or drinking alcohol. Like everything I do is to excess, and it's
There's pros and cons.
I'm still learning how to find that balance.
I think everyone on this planet is trying to find that balance, and I mean, some people figured it out, or maybe they got lucky and now they're successful enough where they can just do whatever.
They can delegate all of the bullshit to other people.
Yeah, or they, get in a comfortable spot where they can coast for a little bit.
Well, that's not me. But
I've been coasting for the last year and a half ever since my mom died, and it's okay because financially things are fine. In fact, last year somehow I ended up making more money, even though I did less than ever, just from passive income from streaming and stuff like that, which is crazy.
That's awesome. You have your music has millions of streams on Spotify.
I think I had in the last year a couple million, 2.6 or something like that.
Hell yeah!
And that's real money. And it's the one thing about taking care of my dad is I have way less expenses. So anything that I've made, I've just thrown in the bank.
That's
which
smart.
Means for this COVID thing, I'll be fine. I wasn't going paycheck to paycheck, kind of just barely scraping by. So I'll be fine. There are some things that are going to get canceled. I was supposed to play a video game Hall of Fame induction, which is cool.
Cool.
Yeah. I play lots of wacky gigs. And sometimes they're cool and sometimes they're not, but I just do them anyways. And sometimes they pay well too. But, I'm gonna get hit by this like everyone else is. I am worried for a lot of my musician friends, especially who rely more on touring, yourself included. And the other thing is people aren't going to have money to buy albums.
That's the question I was bringing up to a buddy the other day. I'm like, okay, so everyone's got their virtual tip jar out, but what happens when no one has any income to put in that virtual tip jar? Where is that capital going to come from?
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know. So it's weird, and especially because now the numbers of people that are out there and asking for the money has exponentially increased. I mean, 9 million people file for unemployment, and then every my Facebook timeline is pretty much people I didn't even know play music. I didn't even know this person played music, and they're live streaming and asking for money. It's I didn't even know you had a guitar, dude. I mean, not to be an elitist or anything, but it seems like. There's way more hobbyists that are look at me now than before. Do you notice that?
Yes and no. At the end of the day, everyone's screwed, and and everyone's gonna do what they have to do to survive. And so, I'm never gonna judge somebody for asking for help. And I'm going to try really hard not to be elitist about it, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I judge any of these people because I get it, because I do crowdfunding for every single album I put out since 2010. You know, like I've been asking people for money since, you know, before there was even platforms for it. I remember we crashed our van and I was like getting money from people just via PayPal back in 2008 kind of stuff.
And people had it. And I'm worried that they won't have it in a month. Like in a month, I think everyone's budget's going to be like, yeah, I'm not spending it on frivolous stuff. I'm just going to.
And why would you? Why would anybody? Yeah. It's not smart. You know, I'm right next to my computer here is a list of my expenses, and I was able to call a lot of these creditors and call people I owe money to, and a lot of them were cool about it. But there are some of the big ones aren't. Rent is one of them. Like they can't in California, they can't evict us, but we're still gonna owe them that money.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like we fucking gotta pay. And it's like, do we want to pay now or do we want to pay fucking 4 months worth of rent in July? It's like.
And the Psychostick guys, you know, you saw that they did that live stream and they raised like $6,000 or something to pay their, you know, practice-based rent and stuff like that for a couple months. And
it's amazing.
Yeah. And, you know, they were talking about, they already had that stuff set up because they were already looking at the idea of doing live streaming like concerts and performances. And so they had all of the tech ready to go.
They had us on their live stream and like Downtown Brown performed. I forget. It was back in December. So,
cool.
Yeah. So everything, they're way ahead of the curve as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. Josh actually talked to me about that. He's like, have you thought about doing live streaming concerts? And I was like, yeah, once I get better, then I will. Because I actually have a setup too, because all of my stuff is direct to the PA. Yeah. So I can set it up real easy where like I have a studio quality sound, quote unquote, where I don't have to hook up 47 mics and have another guy, you know, mixing it live or something like that. And so my setup works actually super well for that. The hardest part for me is like trying to read a chat or whatever. I got to set up another monitor or something like that where I can actually read it. But tech wise, it's totally doable for me. So I'll probably end up doing that. I don't know if I'll end up doing all the tip jar stuff that they do. But even just for keeping my name out there, I don't know. It's hard, man.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a debate with myself the last few days because people have been DMing me. They're like, when are you going to go live? When are you going to do a live concert? And so I'm working on OBS and I made this little overlay that has all of my, like, you can pay me if you want to. But even that, like, I feel like I'm at a point right now financially where I could coast for maybe a few months before it starts getting really dire. I have a little bit of savings, and my girlfriend and I like have been pretty good with our money for the last however many months, saved a lot. But it's like, so do I even want to put that out there when there's people that might need it more than me? Like it's a moral dilemma. I'm just like, you know, because I have a Patreon and people, you know, there's X amount of people that are giving me money a month, but it's just should I be asking is the question. And
that
would it help?
Yes.
Would it help me? Yes. But like, is that money going to dry up for anyone to even support anyone else? Like it's totally fucked.
It is. And I've had a lot of the similar thoughts go through my head because I'm relatively stable. And you know, I'll be fine. But, also it's sort of like, but maybe I should be doing this, but it would be taken away from somebody else who's like gonna be broke next month.
I'm gonna be broke pretty soon, but right now I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm making a fish sandwich for myself.
Oh,
the oven's at 450, so I'm putting my fish in right now. So if you want to follow me to put anything in the oven, it's already preheated.
Thank you. Sorry, my dad was telling me something.
Yeah, fish sandwich. I miss my mom. I live like thousands of miles away from her, so when she was recovering from her craniotomy, I was there the whole time. And when she had her hip replacement surgery, she actually when it was crazy because before they knew she needed a new hip, they were just like, take ibuprofen, and she did that. and then she ate a hole in her stomach.
Oh no!
So then she started having internal bleeding, and they had to. Her hemoglobin count was really low, so they had to do blood transfusions, and then they're like, oh well, you needed a new hip this whole time. And so it's to the point where she can't take ibuprofen anymore. She can't take any what's it called? NSAIDs. She can't take any NSAIDs. So when she actually got her hip replacement surgery, they couldn't give her NSAIDs. So the inflammation like lasted way longer than say a normal patient getting a hip replacement. So they had to put her in like outpatient rehabilitation, and it just took a really long time. And we had watched Law and Order by her. It was sort of like a nursing home, but it was a rehab center, and it was I know the grind, man. I think it's cool. It's good of you. I think you're a good dude for taking care of your dad.
Well, it's what I will say is there's no way that I ever expected that I would be right here where I am sitting right now, like ever. It was not in my head whatsoever that this is what I would be doing now, where, I was living the life. I had a really stable, cheap place I was living, and I was making money off of music and had all these jobs and stuff like that. And then boom, like one day, my mom died suddenly, and she was awesome in taking care of my dad for the most part. And I actually didn't even really know the extent of his health issues. Yeah. And she just had a stroke out of nowhere and died. That day, my life changed. When you get thrust into a situation, you just do it. You don't even think, right? This is what has to happen right now. And we had no other family that was local. Literally none. I'm the only person here. So it's not like I can, go to someone else and be like, hey, you do this or whatever. So it was an overnight, change. In fact, the place I was living, I had a roommate, and I don't think I was even at my apartment for more than 10 minutes a week for the first month and a half that all this was going on, because I was just at home taking care of all of these crazy changes that were going on. Like you, I have been finding difficulty even still a year and a half later to find the balance of dedicating enough me time to me and my projects, dedicating enough time to him, dedicating enough time to my girlfriend and the things that make me happy. And I've probably been spending a little bit more time on self-care and my girlfriend than I have my career in the last year and a half. And I'm worried that will have negative consequences down the road, in that I always feel like I'm missing it, missing my shot, man.
Well, right now, not really. There's no shot to be missed.
True. Yeah. True. I had a couple audio jobs that I had to drop immediately. Some of which I'm kind of glad to have dropped because they were problematic, but that's okay. So I haven't been working as much, and I haven't been taking on as many jobs, and it's a struggle though to find that balance, and I still haven't found it, and I'm working at it. And luckily, I've got really supportive people in my life, who are always willing to help out, and but in some ways, it's on me. It's very much on me.
Well, at the end of the day, you're just one person, and And I talk about it on the podcast all the time. One of the things I do about myself is I beat myself up for things that are beyond my control, because in my head I'm just like, oh, well, if I did this differently, or if I did this, things would be like this. But ultimately, something like your mom dying of a stroke and your life changing overnight, there's no way you could have predicted that. And sometimes family and relationships take a priority over something like a career, and it's tough to balance it. I am hard on myself all the time for things I wish I could be doing, but I'm doing this instead, yada yada yada. But I think ultimately we have to we have to be able just to like be okay with ourselves and our limitations and the situation around us. And this is coming from a guy that I struggle with this. So it's like I'm telling you what I should be telling myself, essentially.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to say it out loud before you can like really take it to heart, you know?
I'm super anal and obsessive, and I want to control everything around me. And the hardest part about all of this is knowing that so much of this, beyond COVID, just life in general, is out of our control.
Right.
And we just have to adapt and try not to go crazy.
No, I'm with you. I also like control. Like if I'm in a group project, I like to be the guy in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that's why Downtown Brown has had so many band members over the years, because it's my thing.
Yeah. And doesn't it suck being reliant on other people? Don't you wish you could just clone yourself and do all the things? And you know you can count on you. It's like a double-edged sword, because I think some of the people that I've been relying on, they bring their own kind of flavor to the mix, like own personality, especially like with a live act kind of thing. Right.
But yeah, if I was the only one who had to sign on to something in order to agree to do it, like if I didn't have to have a bass player and a drummer sign on, I could say yes to literally everything, because I could just be like, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. But I have to get an offer. And especially out here in California, because the guys I play with essentially are a lot of them are like session dudes they're in the band, but they're also, if there's a better paying gig, they will take that over being in Downtown Brown.
Makes sense. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
It makes sense. And I'm not mad about it or anything, but if I get an offer for a tour or a gig, I have to say, I'm interested in that, and then go to my guys, are you available? And then I have a Rolodex of guys to see who's available and who's interested and who's willing to even fly out to make it happen. And then they get back to me, and then I can confirm. And sometimes I do the ballsy thing, which is just say yes to an opportunity and then figure it out. You know, I did that with the last tour we did that led up to the pandemic. I essentially just said yes. And then I had to find the guys to do it afterwards, which it got a little hairy, because I'm like, what if I can't find anyone to do this shit? And then I said yes, and like I'm obligated to play these gigs, and I don't have a band. Like, but what's weird is it always ends up working out somehow.
Life finds a way.
Yeah, life finds a way. But that's why the tour that we did, there was a Canadian bass player, and then there was a Brett who I'd never played music with before until that tour. He's just an LA guy that answered a Facebook post.
It's crazy. Sometimes, like when you reach out, sometimes magic happens. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, I've had pretty good luck with some of those sorts of things. Not exactly the same situations. But even when I just posted online about, hey, I'm feeling sick during a pandemic and I can't get tested, you know, I had dozens of people reach out to me. I had a doctor reach out and call me. I had, friends be like, yo, I will get you anything you need. I'll go shopping.
I haven't read her book, but Amanda Palmer has a book called The Art of Asking. And it's safe to assume that it's about, if you put that energy out there, that you need something that the universe kind of provides in a way. And her Patreon is like the biggest Patreon ever, like one of them.
Sure.
But she's always been a proponent of, asking ye shall receive kind of thing. So
it's hard, right? Like I'm bad at the sort of money merchandising part of like merchandise and
Spaceballs the flamethrower.
Yeah. When it comes to like promoting financial related stuff, for whatever reason, our society, especially with musicians, it's like, oh, like everything should be free and like blah, blah, blah. Like I even had band members who would say like, we should just give away our album. I'm like, why? Why would we do that? There's like an ingrained like thing that musicians should always be poor. So they're always earning it.
Oh, as soon as you're comfortable, you're a sellout. You know?
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Which is weird. It's the opposite in hip hop, though. Selling out's the coolest thing you can do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. You can get those sponsorships and like those. Like, that's the coolest thing you can do. Now, the funny part is with the people that I know who actually do music for a living, all that stuff is cool. Like, if you're killing it, like, everyone's like, yeah, like, you're killing it. But it's the random fans that are like, oh, man, they're, like, selling out. But your friends in the industry, they'll be like, yeah, good thing for you getting that sponsorship from a vodka company or something like that.
I feel like, especially in the punk community, it's...
yeah. And you have punk crossover.
Yeah, I would definitely. Like, our agent out here in California just books all punk bands. That's why most of the gigs we get opening for bigger bands, unless it's like Psycho Stick, because they're just old friends. We're usually like opening up for some bigger punk act. And what's really funny is something that's supposed to be this open-minded, all-inclusive kind of like. I mean, punk is pretty paint by numbers, especially like this classic nostalgia circuit that we're a part of. It's a lot of like really old ways of thinking, and you mean
like the Vans Warped Tour?
Yeah, well that's gone now. But
I know, but it's
like
just funny how corporate it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. But like opening for Dead Kennedys back in like 2014, we did like a tour with those guys, and the amount of hate those guys get from they sued Jello Biafra that put out all those records because he was actually getting in the way of them being able to monetize any of the music that they worked on as a collective, as a 4-piece collective. And I could see from both angles, like he didn't want to, like Jello didn't want to corporatize the Dead Kennedys music, but in the same time, like these guys want to make a living from this famous ass music that they created. So I don't know. Can you blame them for getting the rights back to that and actually making a living off that music?
It's hard. You know, at the end of the day,
it's one of those there's two sides to the story thing that you were talking about
absolutely.
earlier. Yeah.
There's two sides of the story. And, you know, we all hate the rich, right? Like, I've been trying to be better about, you know, thinking I'm worth it. You know, I can ask for money. It's not a bad thing if I'm making a ton of money or something like that. Not that I usually am, because I'm usually not, but I don't have
worth it.
Yeah, and
God
there's some crazy head games that come out. Like, it's so strange. There's nobody who would be like a job that they work. You know, like let's say you go work for, I don't know, Amazon or some company, and like they're like, no, you should just go because you love the company you work for, you know, not just, you should be doing this for the love of it. I'm like, no, like it can be both. I mean, you can love your company. Not that I love Amazon, but I don't think it's wrong for musicians to get paid for what they're doing. But I've definitely had these weird thoughts creep into my head about like punk holier than thou bullshit.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't think it's wrong to make money, but when I'm trying to make money doing it, sometimes I feel like I'm a dirty, or I'm like, like I don't know if I should be doing this. Like even just making the overlay for when I go live and do, like, because I'm going to do a live stream concert, and I made this overlay that has like my Venmo on it, and I'm just like, oh, that feels so dirty. It feels so dirty. But then again, if I was busking on the street, I would have my guitar case open. You know,
it's funny how that works, right? They're pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, but still, I'm like, ugh, I feel so naughty, you know?
Yeah, and that's all just mental, societal stuff. It's all bullshit, really. And I'm trying to get over it because, you know, doing what you love and making some dollars is cool. And being able to like be stable and not worried about your finances next month is cool. So I don't know. But I like having the tip jar out there definitely has this feeling of like, nah, I feel like I'm kind of begging and I don't want to look like that. You know, I want to just do it for the love of music, man. It used to be about the music, but it's that too. But
yeah, but I also like, you know, in a couple months, if this thing lasts until July, or I don't even know what they're projecting now, because I've been kind of, I mean, this could go on for way longer than anyone even knows. And
do you want my my professional projection.
Go ahead. It's going to make my hairs on my body stand up. But
Yeah. So, depending on what happens in the summer, but at the end of the day, like, it's pretty much coming back in the winter. Like, that's what, or it's just not leaving ever. So until you get a working vaccine, that is essentially when that's going to happen. Now, barring something crazy, they already have vaccines and they already put it into people, which is not something they usually do, but, you know, extenuating circumstances. The thing is you have to wait 12 months to make sure that person doesn't die from this vaccine and to make sure it actually works. So
that's terrifying.
not only that, once you have determined that it has worked, you have to wait another 2 months to ramp up production to fucking put it in every body on the planet. So potentially we're looking at 14 months. Yeah, you probably didn't want to know that, did you? But
oh, no.
Here's the thing, is if that happens, there's going to be massive societal changes on how, like, there's going to be a UBI, a universal basic income, like, because society will cease to function.
Yeah.
If like people are out of work for 14 months, like, that's just what's going to happen.
Well, if they're able to bail out corporate America, they should bail out the citizens, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, the best is United, right? United got this like couple $1 billion bailout, and then they still fired their people anyways.
Oh no.
Yeah. And it's like, yo, you just got a bailout and you're just pocketing it like we knew you would. So these companies have money. Like, they have been having record profits for years.
This is my other question. Is it that you've probably seen Zeitgeist, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Wait, I think I have, actually.
Well, it's about how the Federal Reserve is printing all the money, but we owe the Federal Reserve for all of that money being printed or virtually existing. So we're pretty much every single dollar that's floating around in America, there is interest on it, and we owe someone for that money. That's I mean, I don't know, I don't know too much about it, but are these bailouts coming from the Federal Reserve? Like, are we borrowing that money from ourselves at an interest rate? That's my question.
I have no idea. I know that money's fake.
The other thing is when they do make the vaccine, this is my other question. Do you think that's going to be them implementing the tracking device and all the, like 666?
I don't believe in any of that bullshit.
What about 5G? What about 5G?
Did you see me post about 5G today?
No. I'm just asking because I'm just throwing shit out there and spitballing. Man.
So I'm skeptic, like, in that I know that 5G, there's literally nothing wrong with it. Like, I know how the electromagnetic spectrum works.
I do not.
5G is what's called non-ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation is the kind that hurts things. Like UV is ionizing radiation.
Okay.
And what it does is it attacks your DNA and actually knocks off parts of the molecules so that it will corrupt your DNA, and that's what causes cancer, is sort of DNA damage collectively over time. And 5G is, I haven't checked. It's a certain number of gigahertz. I'm pretty sure it's like below infrared light, which is what we use to like turn on our TV. So, yeah, it's absolutely nothing. And conspiracy theorists are always just looking for something, right?
Well, what I read is when the pandemic really hit, I read something that someone sent me, like a DM or a screenshot or something, that said that the implementation of 5G caused the virus.
Right. And so Occam's, first off, what? Like, propose to me a mechanism here. Like, that's the thing, is if you're going to say that, propose to me a mechanism of how a tower putting out radio waves makes a virus a, like, essentially living organism. And it turns out that doesn't exist. This is not a thing that happens. Like, just because there is a correlation between 5G existing and a pandemic does not mean that there is any causation whatsoever. It's just people like want there to be truth out there, but like Occam's razor, like we have sequenced the genome for COVID-19. We know like where it came from. It came from a bat because of things, genetic markers on it and stuff like that. And like 5G has nothing to do with that. We have proof of the mechanism that like diseases can transfer from different species. Like I forget what the technical term is, and like we have proposed mechanisms for all of these things. They are real things that happen and have been documented in the past. And we don't need 5G to do this. Like why would I believe some absurd conspiracy theory when there is already a completely plausible like mechanism of action that could happen?
See, this is where you're probably able to calm yourself a little bit more than someone like who I don't know. I don't have the bullshit detector. I'm just a lay person. There's some things I consider myself an expert at, but none of them have to do with like extensive learning. I'm just a guy reading things on the internet with an overactive brain. So
that's the hardest thing, right? Is there's so many things out there that are just total bullshit.
Right.
Even from reputable news sources. And it's so hard to separate the fact from fiction. And so educating yourself, that's the problem too, is there's educational materials out there. Let's say you go on, I don't know, Prager University, you can find all sorts of crazy bullshit on there.
Oh, wow.
That is not true at all. So even trying to educate yourself, you can actually get bad info. And so I guess I'm a little lucky in that I was able to get a proper education from our liberal elite university system with their accreditations and bullshit like that. But the thing is I've learned scientifically how they come at conclusions and the level of rigor that they put into figuring out this or saying the things they know. And how they know them, and also the peer review process. I was in this thing called a journal club when I was working in a lab, where you take a journal, like a science journal, where they publish their findings. And I couldn't believe the doctor I was working under, like how much he would rip into these studies and be like, I have a problem with the way they did this. I have a problem with the way they did that. I don't think that this graph clearly shows that because of this and blah, 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 blah. And like, they really like push to sort of like, call things out for bullshit. And I was really surprised, because I was reading this paper and I was like, well, it looks like this is what they say it is.
Right.
And he had a bigger bullshit detector than I did. And he could point out all the flaws in the study, and, that's peer review. That's what that is. And I was surprised at how rigorous it was. And so when something is a scientific consensus, like, believe it. Now, they could be wrong. It's possible. But the other thing about science is, like, if there is new information that comes out that disproves something that's out there, they will adapt to that. That is how science works. Like,
unlike religion.
The problem with religion is they have the answer already.
Yeah.
And then they take whatever facts seem to support the answer that they've already constructed.
So it's backwards.
They come at they already have the solution, and now they just mold everything to fit that worldview. Meanwhile, science is the opposite. Is we take a look at all the evidence and then discuss what would be the best conclusion from these the evidence that's available.
And it can be constantly amended as new studies and whatnot, new facts come to light.
And it's not perfect,
right.
But nothing is. It's the best way we have so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it can be tough. It can be really tough.
So what's your degree in again?
Cellular and molecular biology. Mostly genetics, actually.
That's awesome. I did not know this about you. That is not in your Wikipedia.
No, it's not. Maybe it should be, but we can cite this. We can put it in there and cite this podcast.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's add to the story.
That's the thing about Wikipedia is like, if you have done enough interviews and enough journalists have written about what you've done, then as long as it's cited in like a piece of media, yeah, because that's the thing is everything has to be cited.
I did not know that. Did you write your own Wikipedia page?
No, somebody else did. I've edited it. Like there was one or two, like I think like game projects that I added on there that weren't on there. But somebody else did that.
And all you have to do is prove to them that it exists or that you're citing something that exists.
So on Wikipedia, every single thing that's said is supposed to have like that little annotation number.
Yeah, and that's down at the bottom.
Yeah, and it goes down at the bottom, and that's the source. And so if you can cite the things that you're saying, like that, if you ever heard in like school or something like Wikipedia is not a source, it's like, no, it's not a direct source. What it is a collection of citations.
Sources.
Yes. Yeah. And so what you do is you find the thing that Wikipedia says, and then you go to the source at the bottom, click on that, and that's your original source.
Ah.
Yes. And sometimes I will do that when I'm really trying to research a topic is I'll go to the Wikipedia page, look it up, because Wikipedia is for the most part like a good tool. I will go to the original source that says that and make sure that like it says what it proposes to say. And maybe it gives me more detail on a specific sentence that I'm like looking into.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm a big old nerd.
You're a big old nerd. I know how Wikipedia works now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm. That's the one thing that I can take away. I mean, I've done like 30 podcasts so far, and most of them have been interviews. Some of them have been me like solo, just ranting in my van and whatnot. But I always feel like I take something away from having a long form conversation. Because let's say I were to like call you on the phone, we wouldn't be talking for an hour and a half. I mean, we might, but it wouldn't. I just love this platform, and I love that I'm able to get people that I'm A, friends with, or B, we have collective interests or similar interests, or we've done tours together, or yada yada, or even people I don't know at all. There's always something I can take. Like I interviewed this one guy who's a cancer survivor, and he was talking about his mentality going through thinking he was gonna die, and it was like some riveting shit.
Yeah.
And you're a super smart dude, so I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, yeah, tell me about this. Tell me about
I came up with an answer for you, by the way, because you were asking me about the 5G. So I betcha if you go to the Wikipedia page for 5G, there will be like a controversy or like conspiracy theory section there. I guarantee there will be because there's press about it.
Okay.
And so you can go and see what they say there, and you can check the sources. And if you're really crazy, you can go to what's called the talk page, which is when somebody edits Wikipedia, they can usually put a comment back and forth. So if somebody edits somebody else's thing, sometimes you can even find like a comment war, especially on like political pages where people are trying to frame things. So you can even go and look up what people are saying about the specific comments. Like, I changed this because it's too blah, 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 or something like that. Or it's too jaded, or it's too.
But if you want to change something, you have to be able to cite something.
Yeah, absolutely. You can say that the way that somebody phrased something is too inflammatory, or like, because people got bias, we all got bias. But you could probably go to the Wikipedia page for 5G. I bet you there'll be a controversy section, and you can see what people are saying about it, and you can even check the sources.
That is wild.
Yeah. That's the best tool to inoculate yourself. Wikipedia, Snopes, they're super good. And they're not always going to have the best answers in the world, but it's something. And the thing is people are fighting to keep it clean and have the best, well-cited information on there. So,
yeah, that's good, because that's going to weed out a lot of the crap.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you have your truth finding down to somewhat of a science.
Something like that. I don't know. Using Wikipedia is a quick hack.
Right.
Yeah.
But I definitely, after after reading what you wrote on Facebook about being symptomatic, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because I've found it hard to breathe, and I've had some sort of respiratory thing for the last 3 weeks myself. I haven't gone into like a hard cough, or I haven't had a fever. There's no way for me to even tell if I had a fever because I don't have a thermometer.
And you may be symptomatic, like asymptomatic, and it's possible you have it. So like, that's crazy, right?
I definitely was driving around when it first hit, and I was taking a lot of money from people, and people wanted to shake my hand, and I was getting hugs from strangers, and people wanted to take photos with me, stuff like that. And the whole time it was happening, I'm like, should I be doing this? Should I be gone? Should I have already canceled this? But it was a short run. It was only like a 5 or 6 day run, and we ended up doing like 5 out of those 6 shows. The last one got canceled because the day it was supposed to happen, I think it was the 15th, everything got canceled. Like the entire state of California shut down that day. It was a Sunday, and we were supposed to be in Oakland. But
I mean, it's possible. And what my doctor said is just assume you have it. Just assume it. Because if you're wrong, then you just spend some lonely nights with your girlfriend, but that's all you can do, right? Like,
and I'd rather be wrong and be stuck here for as long as they tell me than to roll the dice and go pretend like I can live any sort of normalcy. You know what I'm saying? It's just not worth it.
Yeah, no, the mental calculus is just like, oh, I would rather just waste some of my time unnecessarily. Like assuming that I don't have it right now. It's possible I have some mystery fucking, respiratory illness that isn't COVID, but I'm going to assume that I have it. And so if you just assume that you have it, you're going to make all the right choices to not just protect yourself and your loved ones, but society at large, because it just takes one asshole to like fuck up a bunch of other people's day. And all that's how exponential growth works.
I read somewhere online that I don't know who posted it or whatever, but they're able to track all the phones of all the spring breakers that were in Florida, and they tracked where they ended up, and they literally ended up all over the country. Like they were down there and doing the interviews. Like I assume you saw the interview where the kid's like, if I get it, I get it, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But they just showed like where all the cell phones ended up, and it was just the mass. It just makes total sense that this thing can spread so quickly because people. This is before. Have they even shut down state borders? Are people still getting on planes?
It's state by state, I think.
Right.
And I know that there are some restrictions, and I think some of them were even found to be illegal, like Massachusetts and New York or something like that, or Rhode Island and New York. There was some problem there, but what was I going to say? I was going to say something. The thing about this is, to that kid, if I get it, I get it. It's not about you. It's about everyone else. And that's the social contract, right? We live in a society. We live with other people. It's not just you alone on a mountain. Like that's the individual liberty thing, right? You can do whatever the fuck you want as long as it doesn't affect anybody else. Yeah, but the second that you do something that affects other people, like, man, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself, because that's some bullshit. And that's the problem with anti-vaxxers. That's why people get very angry at anti-vaxxers. If it only affected them, nobody would give a shit. They'd be like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, but it affects other people because of, your herd immunity and things like that.
And you send a kid with measles to school and...
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I've been more of an asshole online about spreading misinformation, because it's not about you, it's about everyone else. And it's dangerous and problematic. If you want to, believe that jet fuel can't melt steel beams and 9/11's a hoax and the moon landing is a hoax, you're annoying and an asshole, but it's not dangerous to other people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just dangerous for their dumbness, but not. I just think you're an idiot. But this stuff, I called out my cousin. She posted something from some sketchy website about some coronavirus conspiracy theory, and I was like, this is irresponsible. Don't do that. And she was like, we'll agree to disagree. And, whatever.
4
days later,
mechanism.
the state was, 4 days later, the state was shut down and she's taking it seriously now, but whatever.
But why does it have to get to government involvement for us to believe science,
Because a lot of people stand to make a lot of money when the best course for science is not the most profitable way. And so a lot of people have spent a long time sowing doubt, whether it comes to climate change or anything like that.
And that's way more gross than putting out a virtual tip jar, if you ask me.
I think you nailed it. Wait, that wraps it up real nicely. Good wraparound there.
Hey, man, I'm trying. I'm doing my best. God, well, and I think if anyone's going to be vocal about this kind of stuff, it'd be someone that literally you're married to learning as much about this as possible, and you're a smart dude, and you know where to look for the non-bullshit. I mean, that's the other reason I want to pick your brain a little bit is because I trust you more than I trust, fucking Donald Trump. And even like the governor of California, I don't know what to believe because everyone's telling us something different. So I'm glad we could have this conversation.
I think that's the most problematic thing about Trump. Well, there's so many problematic things.
There's a couple things.
But in this situation in particular, especially when information is complex and everyone's scared, you have to be really careful with your words and what you say. And it has to be truthful and honest. And the thing is he's not careful with his words at all. Like, he just says things all the time and doesn't bother to back it up or check to see if it's true. And he's gotten away with it forever because, not to say that most of these things are inconsequential, the stuff that he says, but it's less consequential than a pandemic.
Yeah, right now.
And he can't just say things. He has to think and research before he talks, and he doesn't do it. He's never done it because he'll just fly off the cuff and say whatever is on the top of his head. And he is getting better now. I think he's like in oh shit moment right now. I noticed it a couple days ago as soon as they announced that they expected 100 to 200,000 deaths. I think he got shown some graphs or something where he's taking it a little bit more seriously, but he was talking about his ratings and like weird shit like that. He's like, yeah, I've got Bachelor type ratings. And it's like, yo, what? And
well, the thing is, people wouldn't be tuning into you if they weren't scared and they won't need a leader. You know, like he's just like, you can't, and that's not something to brag about. Like, people are looking for someone to tell them what to do so that they don't die. It isn't because they like find you entertaining to watch or they're like captivated by what comes out of your mouth. It's because they need a leader, And
the biggest problem is he's just not careful enough with his words. He needs to really think about what he's saying and being clear, and so that the American people have something to follow, something they can say, okay, I can separate fact from fiction now. Because all we did was sow doubt in Americans. And so when people have doubts, then they're like, I'm not going to take this as seriously.
I'm going on spring break.
Yeah, going on spring break or closing the schools, that's bullshit. I'm going to go out anyways or whatever. And if he had been, as serious about it as he should have been, and that's actually why people like Cuomo now. And I don't even think Cuomo's a good dude overall. But in New York State, we've had Cuomo's press conferences, and he has been the leader that people needed.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've seen some. Yeah, he's taken this way more seriously than most.
Yeah, and he's very careful about what he says, and he also tries to be hopeful, but he manages expectations in a very reasonable way, and he's stepped up to the plate. And I don't necessarily think he's a good governor, and I bet you he's got a ton of terrible policies that people you can use to tear him apart and not like him. But in this particular situation, he has stepped up to the plate in a way that the president has not.
So what would you rate him? Would you give him a 10 like Trump gave himself?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Maybe I give him a 9. I don't know. He did this thing with prisoners making sanitizer. That was fucking weird. And I don't know all the details in that because it was hard to keep up. But yeah, he's doing as good a job as I've seen anybody in America do. So I'll give him a 9 out of 10. But I am not prepared to defend all of Cuomo's decisions and whatever. So
yeah, no one's infallible.
Yeah,
we're just human beings trying to get through this timeline.
He's just, slightly above the incredibly high bar set by Donald Trump right now. So
he's trailing the Trump. Yeah. Well, hey man, I gotta get something to eat, I think.
Yeah, same. I gotta prep for a D&D session. So
yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming on the potty and let me know.
Potty.
Yeah, the potty. We be pottying. But
Nice.
I'm glad to hear you're well too, because I remember having a conversation with my girlfriend, and we're like, well, if everyone on our Facebook timeline isn't sick, then is this thing even real? But then slowly but surely, like people's parents started getting it, and it started becoming very, very real as far as affecting my small, little bubble of humans. And I definitely wanted to pick your brain about what you thought about, because you were being very vocal about it too. I wanted to.
That's a big reason of why I posted is I knew that this was real. I had done the research and whatever, but I knew that there was still a lot of doubt out there. And I was like, it's important for people to see, even if I don't have it, I think I have it, but like it's important for visibility for people to see, like, this is a real thing affecting people that and it's not going to happen until somebody says something. Like I have an aunt in the hospital right now who tested positive. And, we're all praying for her, but it is a real thing. And that's part of the reason I posted that 13 days ago was like, people got to take this seriously.
Yeah. Wake up. This is actually happening.
Yeah. So, thank you for having me. It was good to catch up.
Yeah, man.
And it's good to hear about your stuff. You guys are awesome. So.
I'm just a guy, but yeah, and that's the thing is maybe we could do it again sometime when, the curse has been lifted and we can move on with our daytime Castlevania 2 journey.
I'm into it. That game sucks. But
I like the soundtrack though.
It's a very good soundtrack. Very good soundtrack.
You have to be a fan of the soundtrack.
Oh yeah. It's like Baroque rock.
But you're not a fan of the gameplay, the way it's set up.
It's kind of a broken game, but whatever. Yeah. I like Castlevania 1 and 3 a lot more.
Those are good.
Yes,
I like it. Castlevania 2. You almost have to like read a playthrough in order to figure out how to get to the end of it.
Well, so just a tiny bit of nerd knowledge. So the translation on that is really bad. So a lot of the things don't really make sense that they tell you. The other thing is they did this thing they thought it would be fun is if some of the NPCs lied to you.
Oh, nice.
And so some of the things that NPCs tell you to do are literally untrue. Yeah,
that kind of steers you in the wrong direction. The hardest part was switching crystals on that granite wall and then the tornado. How are you supposed to figure that out on your own?
You're not. You can't. Like, somebody has to tell you to do it. You got to call the Nintendo hotline.
That's how I figured it out when I was a kid. Nintendo Power had a hotline, and I remember I just was like, well, what do I do now? I defeated the bosses, and I got all the items in all of these mansions, and I'm literally stuck. There's nowhere to go. And then they're like, well, you have to switch crystals, and you have to crouch for 30 seconds in this corner, and then a tornado will pick you up. It's like, how are you supposed to know that?
Yeah.
Plus I was like 9, So
I actually had a VHS tape that had a walkthrough, but it only got to the tornado part. And then after that, you were on your own.
I think the tornadoes, I think you can figure out the rest from there. But like, I don't know, when you're like an 8-9-year-old kid, how are you supposed to figure that shit out?
Yeah, its heart is in the right place. Dracula's heart.
Dracula's heart is in the right mansion. I remember, I to this day very vividly the amount of anxiety and excitement and fear, legitimate fear I felt when I went to go fight Dracula for the first time when I was a little boy in my parents' basement. And I'm just like, and the music, and once you get to Dracula's castle, it's all disheveled. But yeah, when I defeated Dracula, and I didn't even get like the optimal ending because it took me probably like 9 hours of playthrough to you know what I'm saying? There's different endings depending on like how many items you get, how long it took you to figure out the game. But I just remember feeling like I accomplished something great as a young buck. I beat Dracula. So with the help of Nintendo Power, I did it.
You're the man.
I did it.
Way to go, Nintendo.
Thanks, Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll leave it at that. Danimal Cannon. Hey, real quick. Any plugs of any sort of links or anything? I'm gonna put all your links in the description of the YouTube. But
I'm pretty sure all my shows got canceled, but I might be playing in Seattle in June. Maybe we'll see. Or maybe a promoter will decide to reimburse my plane tickets. Probably not. But who knows? Maybe. I got my stuff on all the streaming platforms, the Spotify's, Danimal Cannon, and Apple Music or Google Music or whatever people use these days. I like Bandcamp. All my stuff's on Bandcamp. Oh, it's on the titles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the other one? No, what's the one
Beats?
with the really dumb name?
I don't know.
Deezer. Y'all on Deezer?
Oh, God, you're making my chest hurt from laughing.
Deezer.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm on the Deezer.
Good.
Yeah, Danimal Cannon. I'm trying to do some YouTube stuff. I got all this camera equipment, and so I'm trying to do more YouTube stuff. So Danimal Cannon on YouTube. Go subscribe, ring the bell.
Yeah, ring the bell.
Leave a comment, like, subscribe.
Yeah, it helps with the algorithm.
Yeah. But I'm on the social medias. Come say hi.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for taking time out of your day. I hope your D&D game goes well. I hope your health remains constantly getting better, and I hope your father's health remains constantly good. And we'll see you when we see you, man.
Awesome. It was really great talking with you, and I wish you guys the best too. And let's hope that I'm completely wrong about all those things that I said before and how long this is going to last, and everything will be back to normal in no time.
Well, we'll see. I'd rather have realistic expectations than like Trump said, everything will be better by Easter.
I think I'll end it with prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Well, I'll see you on the internet, and hopefully we'll cross paths at a show sooner than later.
Let's make it happen. Thank you, dude.
Hell yeah.
Namaste. Namaste home. That's what I've been saying lately.
Nice.
Namaste the fuck home. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. It was great chatting with you. I will get this audio saved, and I'll process it a tiny bit because I do that. I'm an audio engineer, so.
You probably are better at it than I am, so do your thing, man.
Yeah, I'll just make it sound good. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Word. It was great chatting with you.
All right, you too, man. Be well.
Thank you. Peace.
Okay, bye.